So I hope through your channel that message goes. I really don't see the basis for your question.
In your response, you said, quote, "It is hypocrisy."
I thought you were supposed to ask me a question.
Mr. Minister from TV Pakistan, if you would like to entertain my question answer. Okay. How about Kulbhushan? First of all, India and Pakistan have been accusing each other about terrorism. Hina Rabbani, as you said, yesterday, she brought up here.
Could you come to the question?
My question is, how long South Asia is going to see this terrorism and is disseminating from New Delhi, Kabul, and Pakistan? How long they are going to be at war, number one? And second, and how about the UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir? Does India abide by it or not?
You're asking the wrong minister when you say how long will we do this? Because it is the ministers of Pakistan who will tell you how long Pakistan intends to practice terrorism. So, look, at the end of the day, the world is not stupid, the world is not forgetful, and the world does, increasingly call out countries and organizations and people who indulge in terrorism. And by taking that debate elsewhere, you're not going to hide it. You're not going to confuse anybody anymore. People have figured it out. So my advice is, please clean up your act. Please try to be a good neighbor. Please try and contribute to what the rest of the world is trying to do today, which is economic growth, progress, development. So I hope through your channel that message goes through.
India has extended the import of Russian oil. It is a totally opposite position of the European sanction. Will you change your attitude during the G20 presidency?
First, we need to establish the facts very clearly. The European Union, between February 24th and 17th November, has imported more fossil fuel from Russia than the next 10 countries combined. Just as I were to give you an India comparison, the oil import in European Union is like 6 times what India has imported. Gas is infinity times because we don't import, whereas European Union has imported $50 billion worth, 50 billion euros worth. Even coal imports from Russia by European Union, I'm not singling any particular country, is 50% more than India's import. So the remark that you made that this is the way the European Union is going and this is the way India is going, I would very respectfully suggest maybe
Hello?
European Union is actually.
Hello, mic check. Is this? Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Thanks.
But इसको off कैसे करेंगे?
This doesn't.
वो एक वन साइडेड ही है मेरे को लगता है. I don't think so.
No, I did this.
It should be modulated from here. Switch should be there. I don't know worst situation.
No, that SDA is even worse.
Doing something very much more than India is doing it.
Mr. Borrell is not here today, not here now, but he was in the meeting, and he told the Financial Times before the meeting that the EU should be putting sanctions on refined oil products from India using Russian oil.
You're right. Mr. Borrell is not with us now, but I really don't see the basis for your question because my understanding of the council regulations is that if Russian crude is substantially transformed in a third country, then it's not treated as Russian anymore. I would urge you to look at Council Regulation 833/2014.
I actually want to follow up with something you said at an India Today event a while ago. You were asked about India's downgrading in Freedom House and VDEM and other democracy scores. And the journalist asked you, quote, how do you see this play itself out in terms of how India is being perceived by the world and these new reports? In your response, you said, quote, it is hypocrisy.
I thought you were supposed to ask me a question.
I am asking you a question. It is hypocrisy. We have a self-appointed custodians of the world who find it difficult to stomach that someone in India is not looking for their approval, is not willing to play the game they want to play. That doesn't actually answer the journalist's question. So I want to ask you again, are you concerned that perceived democratic backsliding in India is going to undermine its efforts to become a rising power in the world?
I think it answers the question if you would be objective enough to understand it. I think it says very clearly that the people who are writing these reports have a strong bias. Often they distort facts. Many of these reports are actually riddled with inaccuracy. So I put it to you, there's an ideological agenda out there. I don't know why that's hard to understand.
I just wanted to follow up, Minister, with a quick clarification. You're saying you have no evidence. This is related to the Canadian story, which I'm sure you're sick of speaking about. Have the Canadians, there's been reporting that there have been progressive visits from the Canadians to India, including in August. You're saying that you've never familiarized yourself with the documents that were, or no documents have been provided to you by the Canadians that purport to show evidence that Indian officials in Canada were aware of this attack. You have not seen
let
these
me understand
intercepted.
that. Are you saying the Canadians gave us documents?
I'm asking you if the Canadians gave you the intercepted documents.
No, look,
Indian diplomatic communication.
I have said that if somebody gives us specific or relevant information, we're prepared to look at it.
So you have not received those intercepted communications from
If I had, would I not be looking at it?
I'm asking you for a yes or no.
I think he's given us the answer.
And then the other question I was going to ask.
No, I'm not answering.
A lot of your commentary was focused on democracy and furthering democracy and different forms of democracy. There are occasional comments that we see on the undermining of democracy in India, most recently in the context of the BBC, and just yesterday at the Munich Security Conference, George Soros spoke on many issues, but specifically on open and closed societies, and called on institutional reform in India. How do you, as Foreign Minister of India, explain this when you're dealing with your Quad ministers in particular, as well as others?
Well, look, I actually made 2 points. One, how the world is changing. It is rebalancing. It is less Euro-Atlantic. I don't think everybody gets that. I think old habits die hard. I mean, very candidly, there are still people in the world who believe that their definition, their preferences, their views must override everything else. So, since you mentioned this specific example, I don't know how familiar people are with what was said at the Munich conference. Essentially, Mr. Soros said India is a democratic country, but he doesn't think the Prime Minister of India is a Democrat. By the way, a few years ago, in the same conference, I was there at that time, he actually accused us of planning to strip millions of Muslims of their citizenship, which of course didn't happen. It was a ridiculous suggestion. But you have to understand what this actually means. I could take a view that the individual in question, Mr. Soros, is a old, rich, opinionated person sitting in New York who still thinks that his views should determine how the entire world works. Now, if I could only stop at old, rich, and opinionated, I would put it away. But he is old, rich, opinionated, and dangerous, because what happens is when such people and such views and such organizations, they actually invest resources in shaping narratives. I spoke about globalization. Now, what globalization does is it actually creates lot of the seamlessness of globalization, which creates all the opportunities, also allows narratives to be shaped, money to come in, foundations to go about their agenda. Now, in this particular case, it is very clear that he has very strong political preferences. He actually thinks that, doesn't matter that this is a country of 1.4 billion people, we're almost there, whose voters decide how the country should run. He actually thinks, well, if, and again, I cite him as an extreme example, okay? But there are other, manifestations of this in different countries, where people like him think an election is good if the person we want to see wins. If the election throws up a different outcome, then we actually will say it's a flawed democracy. This to my and the beauty is all this is done under the pretense of advocacy of open society, of transparency, etc. So our generation, we have grown up with concepts like regime change, which influence operations. Now, you can call it what you will. To me, this really looks the same, with a gloss of some kind of do-goodism on it. So, for me, it's actually necessary today that we have today a serious conversation on democracy. When I look at my own democracy, I have today a voter turnout which is unprecedented, electoral outcomes which are decisive, electoral processes which are not questioned.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a request, when the guest arrives, please stand and give him an ovation. Thank you.
This is not a new issue. China has laid claim, it has expanded its claim. The claims were ludicrous to begin with, they remain ludicrous today. And Arunachal is part of India because it is part of India, not because some other country says it is part of India. So I think we've been very clear, very consistent on this. And I think, that is something which will be part of the the boundary discussions which are taking place.
Fresh idea. We could base Security Council membership on ICC test rankings.
I think the better solution would be to leave it to BCCI.
That is a good way to end this panel.
You asked me, is Australia part of the West or is it part of Asia? And the answer is we're both. We're both. And I don't think any of us as individuals or countries has one single identity. I like Tottenham Hotspur. I'm a jazz fan. I like the South Sydney Rabbitohs. We all have multiple identities, and as long as they're self-reinforcing, that's fine. And I think Australia's alliance with the United States makes us a more relevant and interesting partner for Asian countries, and our knowledge of and deep engagement with the Pacific and Asia makes us a more useful ally. Final point, Samir. I know you love fresh ideas. You're always pushing us for one idea. I had a fresh idea on this panel during the interesting conversation about UN security reform. I'm glad to hear there's been some progress at the margins, but sometimes with these difficult diplomatic negotiations, you just need an out-of-the-box idea. So my out-of-the-box idea is that we could base Security Council membership on ICC test rankings. And this would be great for India, it would be fabulous for Australia, and it would encourage the growth of cricket in other parts of the world. So would you support me on that, Minister?
Dr. Jaishankar, you have to respond now.
Yes. I think it's got the kernel of a good idea, but I think the better solution would be to leave it to BCCI.
That is a good way to end this panel.
In life, you have what you have. Pandavas could not choose their relatives. We also cannot choose our neighbors. We would naturally hope that good sense prevails.
A complete failure of a rogue nation who happens to be a nuclear power and unfortunate neighbor of us will be an asset to us or failure, or a liability to us, sorry.
It is a reality to us, not say, in life, you have what you have. I think Devendra ji said, like Pandavas could not choose their relatives, we also cannot choose our neighbors. We would naturally hope that good sense prevails, that, the practices of the past are not followed. That is our hope. And in diplomacy, it is important to be hopeful. But I would admit to you, it is a hope.
Alleged assassinations in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Several individuals. Many of them who are terrorists.
Something allegedly happened in Pakistan. Okay. 2 people in Pakistan, presumably nationals of Pakistan, right? That's what we are talking about?
Yes.
Then you have the wrong end of the stick here. People should be asking Pakistan, who are these people? Who are these sterling citizens of yours who made such valuable contributions that their demise, alleged or otherwise, untimely or otherwise, is an object of international attention? So let's do some digging out here. Who are these people? Why are their alleged deaths causing concern? That should be the beginning, no?
Presumably, but the question is, the charge is being put increasingly of late that India has this Mossad, Israel type approach where you enter the borders of other countries and carry out assassinations.
My question is still not being answered. My question is, if some people allegedly died in Pakistan for whatever the causes, let's first discuss who are these people.
It's well known. Many of them are terrorists. Many of them are okay. So can I presume? We did the background information. We checked it. I mean, obviously the reference is to terrorists. Many of these terrorists are people who have played a role in carrying out terrorist attacks on Indian soil.
So
some of them, including taking part in
these alleged deaths in Pakistan of certain people are
terrorists.
Well, you remember that Hillary Clinton bit about snakes in your backyard. I think you have enough snakes in your backyard. Snakes may bite each other. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's happening in Pakistan. It's for them to figure out what is happening. But I would only say this. The moment I see that word intelligence in any article, I can tell you what every foreign office of the world will tell you. No foreign office, no foreign minister, no foreign office spokesman ever comments on anything. The moment you see that word intelligence, we have nothing to say.
Why is that?
That is Because no country does that, no government does that.
So are you saying that it has no credibility whatsoever, that particular article?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that there is a standard way by which every government responds to anything to do. No government responds to intelligence speculation. Sure. Let us say if this paper had made some article about British intelligence, you think the British Foreign Secretary would be saying, oh yes, come on guys, let me tell you everything about this? Of course not.
Yes, no, but in an election time I'm seeing that, as well as another article in the New York Times which says Modi is where global democracy dies. On 7th of April, a British paper, the Financial Times, comments on the 2024 election being the last democratic election in the country. And you're smiling. So, okay, so would it be that you failed to convince the Western media, despite our stellar relationships with each of these countries, on the robustness of Indian democracy? And how do you read this increasing frequency of these articles on the eve of what is seen to be a historic election in India? I mean, obviously.
Tell me one thing. I mean, you and I are sitting here in India, a week away from the polls beginning. Do any of us actually feel that our electoral process, our democracy is in any danger? On the contrary, pick up today's newspaper. What do you see? You say leader A saying this, leader B saying this, opposition party, somebody doing this deal, somebody crossing over that side. I mean, the democracy is in action. No, they may be living, I mean, they must have some view of India on some other planet.
But you see,
can you actually, do you think any Indian actually believes today that our democracy is not working?
But do you not see a link between Rahul Gandhi going abroad and saying the Western democracy should come and save us, and the comments coming so much so, and increasingly the State Department speaking up for them and the articles coming out? Do you not see a link between his appeal and their follow-up action?
I do see, and in fact, early on began with that. I do see a global elite which often has preferences. When their preferences are not endorsed by an electorate, they apparently get upset about it. So these things do happen. And I also do see, by the way, I do see, politicians from India, and I have called it out before. You cited one example, that going abroad and inviting others to come and interfere in this country, which I believe is wrong. I may have my differences with you, but I don't think, look at our history. What happens when people go abroad and invite people to come? Okay, I think this is.
It encourages that trend. You feel it encourages that trend?
I think that's bad for the country. It's bad for the politics. It's bad for them, by the way.
We extend credits of $3.8 billion to Sri Lanka for fuel, essential commodities, and trade settlement. When we supply 10,000 metric tons of food aid and vaccine shipments to Myanmar. When we fill the gap in humanitarian needs left unaddressed by political complexity. Whether it is disaster response or humanitarian assistance, India has stood strong, contributing particularly to those nearest to us.
Look, I think it's an interesting point you raise, because historically there is a reason why Western democracy were equated. But over a period of time, I think the West needs to outgrow that, because today more people live in non-Western democracies than in Western democracies. So, still we are all creatures of habit. So we use shorthand formulations even if they are anachronistic. So I take
on India.
Hit the nail on the head. South Korea is West, if you're going by values. I think there was a comment in the film that was introduced at the beginning when one said, instead of talking about the West, let's talk about the values that we're trying to promote. And I think as long as these values are grounded in the dignity of the human being, and I think there's much common ground. And, but it's also important to remember that we also need to talk to those who don't share our values. We have a neighbor who don't share our values, definitely, but we need to talk to overcome the huge security challenge. And so, as we try to promote and strengthen the values among like-minded, we also need to talk to those who don't necessarily do so.
This is a really good question. So, if Scotland gets out of the UK, it'll be through the democratic process, right? Okay. Crimea was annexed with a Russian tank in front of the door and telling how to get away to vote. I end every discussion at home about war and democracy and climate. You got China who's trying to shut down everything close to democracy. In India, you're moving forward. You're having elections. You got your problems like you do now. But you've chosen the democratic path. When it comes to Kashmir, I don't know how it ends, but let's be true that two democracies will end it differently. And if you can prove that concept here, then I think it's probably the best way to sell democracy.
Don't worry, Senator, one democracy will separate. And you know which one.
As an elegant swan, underneath there is furious painting.
एक चीज कहूँ यहाँ, ये जो है एक जापानी कहावत है।
One of the main purpose of this conversation is, of course, you all should meet him and listen to him, take inspiration from him. But at the same time, also understand how intricately these complex issues need to be handled in the best of national interest. And Dr. Jaishankar has elaborated this aspect very descriptively as well as very clearly. Even today when we were with him for a whole day, between all the meetings, one-to-one meetings, photo sessions and discussions with the journalists, etc., he was continuously taking a break for 5-7 minutes and discussing some emerging issues in the Middle East and giving guidance to his colleagues of what we need to do. So in his book, he has written a very pertinent sentence. He said that what the public sees as an elegant swan, underneath there is furious painting. Just the glimpse, trailer of all this furious painting that takes place in the diplomacy.
एक चीज कहूँ यहाँ, ये जो है एक जापानी कहावत है।
This year, what India will focus in the international system, and are you considering as a success?
So first of all, thank you that you are figuring out what the direction of the elections is going to be. That's very, very perceptive and wise of you.
I want to ask you, after the elections this year, what India will focus in the international system, and are you considering as a success?
So first of all, thank you that you are figuring out what the direction of the elections is going to be. That's very, very perceptive and wise of you. and what would I see as success? Yeah. So look, the last 10 years, I think in many ways we have contributed more, we have been more visible, we have tried to shape things more, we have taken more responsibility, and I think every one of those aspects, and I can give you examples for each one of them. Each one, they would grow. But sometimes it's good to put things in some kind of number. And the fact is that today we are a shade below $4 trillion. We would be almost double that by the time we finish the next term. So if you look in terms of resource, and what this, people use the GDP number as a marker. Okay? It carries a lot of implications. It means your trade will become bigger, it means your investments would be more, it means your influence would be greater, your overall weight goes up in the system. So I would say in many ways that by the time we reach the end of the decade, it's very clear we would be the third largest economy. But more than that, some of the big changes which are taking place in the world, and to me, as I said, re-globalization, resilient supply chains, the idea of a global workplace where there's mobility, where new businesses, the chips, the semiconductors, the batteries, the electric mobility, the renewables, all of these would require a very different kind of international economy. And it's there that, we can bring our human resources really into play. And to me, when I, conceptualize the world ahead, these are to me the new factors of change, and that's something I have written about in the book as well.
Issues when they arise in this country, especially when it pertains to our food. Whenever there is a discussion, I can tell you that we will not be reticent about speaking out.
If you are looking at energy purchases from Russia, I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe.
No, we are not discussing that. Let me put it to you this way, the clarity about where we stand. People are entitled to have views about us. But we are also equally entitled to have views about their views and about the interests and the lobbies and the vote banks which drive. Whenever there is a discussion, I can tell you we will not be reticent about speaking. I would also, just an example of that point, tell you that we also have a view on other human rights situations, including that of the United States. So we get up human rights issues and their rights in this country, especially when it pertains to our views.
And there are a number of reports suggesting that Moscow and Belarus trying to work out some sort of currency exchange for future energy purchases.
If you are looking at energy purchases from Russia, I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe, which probably we do buy some energy which is necessary for our energy security, but I suspect looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon. So you might want to think about it.
Why not condemn Russia's invasion? Wouldn't this best reflect India's foreign policy goals and international standing?
First of all, thank you for the advice and suggestions in your question. I prefer to do it my way and articulate it my way. We have made
a number of statements which outline our position in the UN, in our parliament, and in other forums. And briefly, what those positions state is that we are against the conflict, we are for dialogue and diplomacy, we are for urgent cessation of violence, and we are prepared to contribute in whatever way to these objectives. We're also addressing the humanitarian situation. In fact, we have the Ukrainians have been in touch with us especially for the supply of medicines. I think a big concern we have, and not just we, I think the world has, is of energy security, of rising prices, of increasing premiums, of limited supplies. So today you have to understand it is a legitimate concern of countries to ensure their energy security. But an equally big worry which is emerging is of food security.
Russia has more and more aligned with China diplomatically, economically, and militarily. How much are you concerned about their alignment in terms of India's national security?
This seems to be my day to get a lot of advice and suggestions from the press, so thank you for joining that. But look, we watch what's happening in the world like any country does, and we draw our conclusions and make our assessments. And believe me, we have a decent sense of what is in our interest and know how to protect it and advance it. Question was, Jage. I said, sir, I mean, it's 5:30, what else could I be doing other than being awake? Because in his life, that is probably natural. He said, Acha, TV dekhe. I said, and I still remember one day, it was around past midnight, and our consulate in Mazar-e-Sharif in Afghanistan was under attack. And we were using the phones, trying to figure out what happened. So this was Afghanistan and Iraq. So you had to kind of get a friendly warlord to go in and help your people. So all of this was happening. We're juggling 4 phones, talking to everybody, keeping the courage up at that end. And the phone rang. My phone rang. And normally, when the Prime Minister calls, you get a no caller ID. Okay. So it sort of took me a bit by surprise. And but even on the no caller ID, usually somebody connects. So this time it was the Prime Minister. Okay. And obviously he assumed I would recognize him rightly. And so his first question was, Jage. I said, sir, I mean, it's 12:30, what else could I be doing other than being awake? Because in his life, that is probably natural. He said, Acha, TV dekhe. I said, TV dekhe. So, kya ho raha hai wahan? So, because that's exactly what happened. I said, nahi sir, wo abhi attack chal raha hai, but the help is on its way. So, I said, so then he said, अच्छा जब खत्म हो जाएगा मुझे फोन कर देना. So I said, सर इसमें 2-3 घंटे और लगेंगे. तो जब हो जाएगा मैं आपके यहाँ बता दूँगा. So there was a pause. He said, मुझे फोन कर देना. And I say this to you because that sense of people who work in the government, people who are in public life, who are in political life, and I would say today people in the country, I mean the way he put it, good times or bad times, is there. And politicians are always there in good times. Okay. So that's in many ways really the difference. the fact that when things are difficult, and we saw that during COVID. We saw that during COVID. There were many, if you look around the world, how leaders handled COVID. Not everybody stepped up, not everybody said, I will take that difficult call, it is my call. And to handle the consequences of very big decisions, which at that time we took, the enormous risk of what was being decided. That is really an extremely, I would say, singular quality.
I don't know whether you'll answer this question, but I will ask you that who asked you? Was it the Prime Minister? And two, what was the first time that you met Mr. Modi, and what were your first takeaway of that meeting?
Who asked me, meaning who asked me to join
the government?
Yes, the Prime Minister. Okay. When did I meet Mr. Modi first? I met him in 2011 in
Namaskara, Vanakkam. Konnichiwa, bonsoir. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I am Disha, a PhD student in IISc. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this interaction on the theme Foreign Policy for Vikasit Bharat with Dr. S. Jaishankar, organized by Prastuta. We are thrilled to be in the august presence of the Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar. I think the audience has already shown you how excited we are to learn and interact with you today. On behalf of Prastuta IISc and NIAS, I extend a hearty welcome to you, sir. I request Mr. Nutan, President, Dr. Daniel, Vice President, and Mr. Ramey, General Secretary of Prastuta, to felicitate our guests. I welcome Professor Satish Vasu Kailas, Faculty Advisor of Prastuta and Professor at Mechanical Engineering Department of IISc. I request Mr. Pratik to gift him a bouquet as a gesture of our appreciation. I also welcome Captain Sridhar Warrior, Registrar of IISc. I request him to accept a bouquet of appreciation from us. I welcome Dr. Anshuman Behra, Associate Professor, School of Conflict and Security Studies, NIAS. I request Mr. Shivam to give this bouquet as a symbol of our gratitude. I also welcome Mr. Nutan, President of Prastuta. I request him to accept this bouquet as a token of our appreciation. I also welcome Dr. Daniel Kiruba, Vice President of Prastuta. I request him to accept this bouquet as a gesture of our gratitude. Let us now commence this event with Deep Prajwalan. Just the way lighting a lamp dispels darkness, India has emerged from the shadows of its dark colonial history to embrace sovereignty, perseverance, and resilience. This marks the nation's transition from a period of subjugation to a bright future where Bharat positions itself at the center stage as Vishwaguru. I request the dignitaries on dais to light the lamp. I also invite Ms. Ekta to invoke the blessings of Ganesha, remover of obstacles and bestower of wisdom, through a prayer.
महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि वसिष्ठवामदेवादिवन्दित महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महादेवसुतो महादेवसुतो गुरुगुहनुतं मारकोटि प्रकाशं शान्तं महाकाव्यनाटकादिप्रियं मूषकवाहनमोदकाप्रियं महाकाव्यनाटकादिप्रियं मूषकवाहनमोदकाप्रियं पपमगमरे सरसनि सपमगमप पपमगमरे सरसनि सपमगमप धनि सरगम सरे सनि पम गम निनि पम गम रे स सानि पम गम नि सगम महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ekta, for your devotional rendition. IISc and NIAS are intellectual capitals of this country and pride themselves in contributing to its development. Indian Institute of Science has fostered innovation and technological advancement through its partnership with prominent government agencies like ISRO, DRDO, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Atomic Energy, and Ministry of Earth Sciences. Similarly, National Institute of Advanced Studies has collaborated with ISRO, DRDO, Indian Council of Social Science Research, and various ministries. It has worked with the Ministry of External Affairs on several occasions, making this event, which symbolizes the convergence of academia and government, all the more pertinent. Today, one of Bharat's eminent leaders will inspire and ignite the minds of the leaders of tomorrow. This program has been organized by Prastuta, a student group in IISc. To speak more about it, I invite Ms. Arushi.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and fellow members of the Indian Institute of Science community, it is with great pleasure and pride that I stand before you today to introduce the vibrant and thought-provoking student group of IISc, Prastuta. Prastuta is the platform where divergent thoughts come together without prejudice and ideas flourish. This group stands out as a shining example of enlightenment, activism, and national pride within our esteemed institution, and it is their dedication that has brought forth this premier event today. The birth of Prastuta is very interesting. It was formed in 1998 when the country was celebrating the triumph of our nuclear tests in Pokhran, but against the backdrop of all the negative thoughts and humiliation of our scientific achievements by many on campus. Prastuta was born to give voice to those with original thoughts who stand for this great nation and have values and traditions that are time immemorial. Though the idea was to spread awareness about our country's scientific advancements amongst the scientific community, Prastuta made significant contributions to the campus life of our students by encouraging dialogues and debates that are in the interest of the nation without fear or prejudice. Since its inception, Prastuta has been a constant advocate for responsible citizenship and societal engagement. Rooted in the belief that knowledge, or gyan, should be the only tool for bringing positive change to our society, this student group has tirelessly worked to foster awareness of an array of scientific, economic, and social issues of national importance. Prastuta is actively involved in organizing various thought-provoking talks by esteemed speakers, demonstrations, and vibrant cultural events that enrich our community. The roster of past speakers includes eminent personalities such as Shri Vidyanand Shenoy of Bharat Darshana, Professor Rodam Narsimha, Dr. R. Chidambaram of BARC, Dr. Kasturi Ranjan from ISRO, Dr. Prahlad of LRDE, S. Gurumurthy, Michael Danino, Swapan Das Gupta, Arun Shori, and many others who have sparked discussions that reverberate far beyond this campus. Prastuta also volunteers in community activities and science promotional programs for school students. Their active involvement in initiatives like the flag distribution drive during the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav reflects their commitment to national progress. This vibrant group of IISc students strongly believes that scientific temper, our traditions, societal progress must coexist for the development of the nation. As we gather here today, let us reaffirm our commitment to these values and embark on a journey towards an enlightened and responsible future. It is with great privilege for us today to host our distinguished guest, the Honorable External Affairs Minister of the Government of India, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, for a talk on the theme, Foreign Policy for Viksit Bharat.
Thank you, Ms. Arushi, for the lovely introduction on Prastuta. Now, I would like to introduce is a professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering and associate faculty at the Center for Product Design and Manufacturing in IISc. His research in friction, stir welding, processing, metal forming, and development of eco-friendly lubricants is geared towards reaching sustainable development. Captain Sridhar Warrior is the Registrar of IISc since 2021. He is an ex-serviceman from the Indian Armed Forces. Dr. Anshuman Behra is an Associate Professor at the School of Conflict and Security Studies, NIAS. His research interest lies in the national security, internal security of India, and militancy and terrorism in South Asia. Mr. Nutan is the founder of Nutan Labs Private Limited, which has been incubated in IISc. His product, Kovi Raksha, has helped lakhs of people during the pandemic. He is the recipient of many state awards. Dr. Kiruba Daniel is founder of JK Nano Solutions and a postdoctorate fellow at Department of Electronic Systems Engineering of IISc. He holds 5 patents and has won several national awards for his work on nanotechnology-based river and lake cleaning products and nanosensors for COVID-19 detection. I now call upon Dr. Anshuman Behra to introduce our distinguished guest.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Disha, for this kind introduction, and thank you Prastuta for giving me this opportunity. And it's with immense pleasure I'll be very brief introducing Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Subramaniam Jayasankar. I am very sure this alert audience doesn't need any introduction of Honorable Minister, but I'll be very brief. Dr. Jayasankar, Subramaniam Jayasankar is India's External Affairs Minister since May 2019. He is a member of the Rajya Sabha from the state of Gujarat. He was the Foreign Secretary of Bharat between 2015 and 18. He also served as the Ambassador of Bharat to United States, China, Singapore, and Czech Republic. He also served the nation in other diplomatic assignments in the embassies in Moscow, Colombo, Budapest, and Tokyo, as well as in the Ministry of External Affairs and at the President's Secretariat. He was also the President of Global Corporate Affairs at the Tata Sons Private Limited from May 2018. Dr. S. Jayasankar is a graduate from the St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi. He has a master's degree in political science and MPhil and PhD degree in international relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. As a recipient of the Padma Shri Award in 2019, Dr. Jayasankar writes on diplomatic issues and Bharat's foreign affairs. A widely acclaimed best-selling book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World, which was published in 2020, is a must-read for the people who are interested in these areas. With these few words of introduction, may I now invite, sir, kindly deliver your insights and share your ideas. Sir.
Professor Bera, Professor Satish Vasu Kailash, Dr. Daniel, Dr. Warrior, and Mr. Nutan, dear friends from Prastuta. Let me first of all say it's always good to come back to NIAS. It's an institution with which I've had a long association, so on this occasion, when I was told that some of you were keen to interact with me, I was really very, very pleased. I wanted to take full advantage of that opportunity. I also found it very interesting the way people on the dais were introduced, because 10 years ago, you wouldn't actually say, this is Mr. So-and-so, and he has X number of patents to his name. That itself is a very interesting change in the manner in which all of us think in the last 10 years. Now, it's not, I would obviously much prefer that today we have an interaction rather than I hold forth. But I thought I'll put a few ideas and thoughts for your consideration. It will help us, I think, trigger a better conversation. And there were originally, I think, the suggestion from Prastuta was that I speak on a multipolar world. But I requested if I could actually be allowed to share some thoughts on our journey towards a Viksit Bharat and what foreign policy for that would mean. And there was a good reason for it. Because in the next few weeks, we are all going to be making decisions which are not there for a few years, but I believe building on what has been a foundation of the last decade, actually decisions which will shape the next 25 years. And it is that 25 years which will be our journey towards a Viksit Bharat. Now, when we speak of Viksit Bharat, what do we really mean? I mean, because again, I'm telling you that there is today a foundation for us to talk about a Viksit Bharat, And that again is something quite new. It's a goal that we have really set for ourselves, perhaps only in the last 2 years.
Even in foreign policy, earlier we used to say our goal is to be a leading power one day. But a Viksit Bharat is obviously something much, much broader and much deeper than just becoming a leading power. So rather than give you an analytical proposition, I just want to share with you maybe 9 or 10 examples. What is today the launch pad? What is it we have done in the last 10 years, which even allows us to dream of a Viksit Bharat? So I just picked 10, I wouldn't say random examples, but examples which all of you would be reading about, last few weeks and months, whenever you looked at anything to do with developments in India. And the first example I pick is actually semiconductors. That today, we all know, this is the beginning of the era of artificial intelligence. Perhaps the most serious competition, other than there's a data, I would say there's a competition for data, but is actually what has been somewhat dramatically described as a chips war. That the countries which have one metric of power will be which country will be able to produce what quality of chips and what quantity of chips, and those chips are actually what is going to drive the economy of our times. Now, this year, we have, after an enormous gap in the building of our semiconductor capability, we actually have concluded in the country the first agreement to set up a fab. It's in collaboration between an Indian company and a Taiwanese company. But apart from that, of course, we are having a number of either purely national efforts or collaborative efforts with regard to assembly, testing, marking, and packaging. Now, compare this with where it was 15 years ago. 15, or actually to be accurate, 17 years ago. Intel actually came to India and said, you know what, we'd like to set up a fab here. We strung them out so long that they finally went to China and Vietnam. So I'm giving you semiconductor as perhaps one example of a base, of a foundation that is in the making. Let me switch to something else. Telecom. Now, telecom, everybody knows telecom. We all live on our phones. First thing we do, get up, we see the screen. Last thing we do, we look at the screen. Now think about it. 2G, 3G, 4G. Where did the technology come from? For us, 2G came mainly from Europe. 3G, 4G came from China. Today, we have one of the fastest rollouts of 5G deployment underway. And that 5G stack is Indian. So and it's very interesting, if you look today at which countries actually have deployable 5G stacks, it's actually Europe, China, Korea, and India. So another brick has been added to the foundation. So I think in the introduction, somebody mentioned some names associated with our space program. I would say, look at the Chandrayaan-3 mission. That for a large part of the world, quite rightly so, what we were able to do with the landing, and that too a very difficult landing, a very complex operation out here, was something really impressive. And what I often hear in the world is, okay, if you guys are capable of that, clearly this is a very different India that we are dealing with. So I'm giving you brick by brick, what are the achievements? Now, there are many more. I think, in a broad sense, the very fact today that we have put such an emphasis on Make in India. And let me tell you, after 10 years of saying make in India, it is actually delivering. I see, for example, in defense, so many things which as a routine used to be imported. And today those same things, I mean, it's bought, without a second thought. It's like it was always there. Now, and in fact, I'm in a city which in many ways embodies Make in India. And I look at, an institution like HAL. I mention HAL because that was the reason I first came to Bengaluru. That it was, my grandfather used to be chairman of HAL, and as a child I first came to visit him in 1962. Today, that same HAL, which 5 years ago people would say is in very great trouble, we don't know how these guys are going to survive. That HAL has a full order book, and I think its share price probably is at an all-time high today. Now, I can just keep expanding it by zone. One of the big complaints about India, rightly so, was about the state of our infrastructure. Foreigners used to complain, how do I come and work and invest in this country if they've got such lousy infrastructure? We would all go out and come back feeling very bad, saying, I went to Malaysia, it was great. I saw something in the Gulf, that was fantastic. I mean, forget about Europe and America. Now, today, that very same country has shown that it is capable of making 7 to 8 new airports a year for the last 10 years running. That it is capable of building 28 kilometers of national highway every day. It is capable of laying 14 kilometers of railway tracks every day. So if you look today really at even infrastructure, it is changing in front of our eyes. I mean, you all live in this city. You've just seen a second terminal come up in your airport. You've seen a second runway come up at your airport. So now I'm giving you, in a sense, what are efforts, you could say, which are planned, which are focused, which is a push of a government. But sometimes, actually, the real test of any system is the stress test. How does a system respond under pressure? Now, the biggest pressure that any of us have had in the last 100 years is COVID. It's actually a once-in-a-century phenomenon. The last time literally it happened, something like that happened, was the Spanish flu, almost exactly 100 years ago. Now, think about it, that a country, and this I can vouch for personally, a country in January of 2020, when we had a G20 meeting of leaders, the discussion was, there's this COVID, it's going to sweep the world, God only knows what will happen. Everybody was preparing, but the one thing which everybody else felt, if there was one country which was going to go down, that was India. It didn't have the health systems, didn't have the manufacturing, didn't have the basic protections, didn't have actually the capacity to cope. And yet, look at the next year and a half. We coped, we created systems, we created COVID centers, we did the mask production, the ventilator production, the PPE production, and we were able to ramp up our the pharmaceutical capacity. And when it came to vaccines, I mean, if you look historically at where we stood in the vaccine queue, typically vaccines came to India, I would say, the last 25% of the waiting lot. This time, actually, we were among the first to vaccinate. Not just the first to vaccinate. We finally ended up supplying vaccines to 99 countries in the world. So even now, I'm giving you the cutting edge. Okay, I'm talking telecom, I'm talking semiconductors, I'm talking space, I'm talking pharma, I'm talking vaccines. But no country progresses only by the leading edge. I mean, all countries are a convoy of some kind. The last ship has to also move if the entire convoy has to move. And for many of us who perhaps have, in a way, more fortunate or who have today established positions in society, I think it's important for us also to realize what is happening in the last mile of our country. In the last 10 years, 250 million people have actually come out of poverty. 250 million people. When you look at any I would say today report card on a constituency, and by the way, this is public information. I encourage you all to do this. Please go. I think there's a site called Shvetapatra. Please go to that site. For every constituency in India, you can actually see how many houses were built, how many water connections were given, how many people got gas cylinders, how many people are using Ayushman Bharat. There's actually like 20 programs out there for all 543 constituencies of our country. Take a look at yours. And believe me, it's an eye-opener that when you look today at actually what, the scale of, literally actually in the last 10 years, the bottom up, the country has gone up. And the numbers, believe me, are truly staggering. When I go outside India and want to make my best impression, I talk to people, I give them the country comparisons. So I tell people, we start talking, so what's happening? Because generally the world knows today something is shifting in India, something big is happening in India. So we get into this comparison, say, okay, in America, you guys have food stamps. So we don't do food stamps, we give, we give free rations to people. So compare the food stamp number with the free rations. Today, 815 million people get free rations. Okay. When you look today at a number like, okay, let's take something concrete. Let's take housing. Housing difficult to do. You got to build it. In the last 10 years, we've built 40 million homes, which are today occupied roughly, and Indian families 4.8. So 190 million people actually have got homes which they didn't have 10 years ago. Now, I can go down this list. Those 20 programs I'm talking about. Take water connection, Jal Jeevan, piped water. So important, critical for health. And this is a city which is very sensitive to water issues. 140 million houses have got water connections in the Jal Jeevan mission. If you look at Mudra, loans, look at Jan Dhan. In fact, Jan Dhan, about 500 million, there have been 500 million bank accounts where money has been paid into. Now, very often, these numbers are the equivalent numbers of countries, big countries, sometimes even continents. So I'm telling you all this because today it's, you can say, when I say that we have a foundation really to think about a Viksit Bharat, you can't, unless we first get out of poverty, we can't think about a Viksit Bharat. But you cannot focus only on poverty and say, I will not develop those leading technologies and I'll be left so far behind that having got my house in order, I'm now so far behind, I really cannot aspire to compete with the rest of the world. So what we are having is actually, if you were to, as I say, look at a convoy, no one left behind is moving the more vulnerable, the lower income people, the below poverty line people, so that change is happening out there and at different levels. And what we are often seeing, because it's the engine of technology which will actually finally propel us to go at a faster and faster speed. Now, I'm telling you what's happening within the country, but it's a globalized world. Now, you have to look at what is happening beyond our shores as well. The first thing which has actually changed is how we feel about our own people. Indians used to go abroad before. Okay, they emigrated, they went for work, they went for tourism, they went to study. Mostly, they're left with a feeling that, okay, I'm going out. I have to figure this out for myself. Which is not a bad feeling. Problem happens when you get caught up in events which are beyond your control. If you went as a student to a country, nobody told you when you're going there, oh, by the way, there might be a big war out there. Nobody told you there was a COVID coming and you would be caught in the middle of a holiday somewhere. Nobody told you you're a merchant shipping seaman and the Houthis will fire on your ship or the Iranians will take you to the port. These are things which are today happening. And again, to realize the sense of it, today there are about 17 to 18 million Indians who live and work abroad. And we have, of course, an equal number of people who are of Indian origin. I mean, they may not be a legal responsibility, but they are also there. So how do we secure Indians abroad? This is going to be an increasing concern for this country, and I'll come to it when I talk about what should be a foreign policy for Viksit Bharat. The second, of course, is, as we become bigger, as life, the world also gets more complicated, we have to make decisions, sometimes difficult decisions, in a very polarized or sometimes even conflictual world. And I can give you two or three. I mean, one which all of you are aware of, you have a Russia-Ukraine conflict. Big problem for us is the first collateral damage of that is the energy prices. Now, the energy prices actually become, in a way, a political call, that you are under pressure saying, don't do this. But if you don't do this, you're actually putting the interests of your own citizens on the line. If we had not, to be blunt, if we had bent to the pressure not to buy Russian oil, believe me, all of you would have been paying 20 to 30 rupees more per liter for the petrol that you would have been buying. Now, I'm giving you that as a very existential, practical, hitting the pocket kind of issue. I give you a second example. Some years ago, we restarted something called the Quad. Now, there was a lot of pressure from us, and frankly from China, not to go ahead. We had attempted something 10 years ago in 2007. At that time, because the 4 countries involved were not willing to collectively or individually stand up, we actually gave up on that effort. This time, we decided, no, we will stand our ground. We will not allow another country to have a veto on what are our choices and our decisions. We similarly had a very recent example in October last year, when there was the attack on Israel, the terrorist attack on Israel. Now, there were people who kind of fudged and didn't want to call a spade a spade. And the fact is, at the end of the day, it was terrorism. So what happens, the ability actually to judge an issue, take your stand, look at it from the interest of your people, your country, stand up to conflicting pressures. I think all of these are also a brick as we move towards Viksit Bharat. And finally, of course, there is the overall standing that any country has in the world. And in our case, I think it comes from a variety of sources. One example was how we managed the presidency of the G20. In many ways, I would say we are today much more probably, a very trusted country in the global south. The rest of the global south feels, okay, India can speak up for us. Or if I look even economically, today if I look in terms of supply chains, or I look in terms of digital transactions. Today, India is regarded as a trusted country, and a lot of business is actually beginning to look at us because we are seen as a trusted destination. So I mention these as very practical examples because it is these kinds of examples today which give us the confidence and the courage and the ambition and frankly the practicality to think, okay, with this as a base in 2024, between now and 2047, how do I actually move towards becoming a developed society? Now, when I come to the subject, which is what sort of foreign policy, because there are many, different people can approach the journey towards Viksit Bharat from their particular, if you have somebody from the technology field, so if you ask a Rajiv Chandrasekhar, he will give you one set of answers. You ask Nirmala Sitharaman, they will give you another set of answers because everybody will look at it from their lens or their domain. So I want to give you, in a way, what should foreign policy be doing in order to get us to be a Viksit Bharat. So again, here I've summed it up with a, I'm kind of partly simplifying it, but I think for purposes of discussion, that is useful. I mean, first of all, I think we need to build, reinforce very deeply our reputation as a democracy that delivers. And I say this very consciously because this is a moment when all of us are going to be making decisions which will validate the proposition that we are a democracy that delivers. Why do I say a democracy that delivers? For two reasons. One, there's been a pervasive, I don't want to say myth, but a belief in many sections that actually if you really want to see great change, transformation, you need, there are authoritarian models. Typically people point to China, saying, China could do this. You must all be conscious that if in your generation you are able to pull off this journey towards Viksit Bharat, you would have demonstrated that actually it is eminently possible for a democracy to also do it. And I think you have that possibility because exactly of that foundation which has been built up on the last 10 years. Now, what is key to that? Key to that is actually, frankly, good governance. That I gave you a set of numbers, infra is moving like this, pharma did this, airports were moving like that. What are the outcomes of? They're finally outcomes of good governance. That the same system, by being repurposed, by having a vision, by having a leader, by reforming itself, by, in a way, there's a rigor and a vigor in the system today. The same system, you could have built 28 kilometers of road 25 years ago. So it is not that the country has changed. But we as a people have actually today pulled up our socks and are moving much more purposefully in a certain direction because actually we are both the reason for good governance and in many ways we are also beneficiaries of good governance. Now, what is key to good governance? Most of all in our country, digital. That if you look today at delivery of public goods and public services, the simplest things in your life. Last time any of you went to get a driving license? Which of you went to get a passport? Look to see any entitlement that you ever had and see the difference. Try to remember, because human beings generally, that the bad memory tends to fade away and the good reality becomes the new normal very fast. Think back of periods, that same service today, which maybe in days, if it becomes weeks, you start grumbling, okay? You used to put up with it in months, sometimes, frankly, even longer. So today, if there is a single thing which I can tell you has impressed the world about India, it is actually the manner in which we are using digital for governance and for delivery of public goods and services. And the embrace of technology by India, believe me, is astonishing. I mean, we have taken to it like duck to water. I mean, and nothing is more graphically illustrative of this than the UPI figures, the cashless transaction figures. I mean, probably, I don't know which one of you, when was the last time any of you actually pulled out a banknote? Now think about it, you go to a shop, I mean, people look at you like very strangely now, if you actually start brandishing money. So, and believe me, take it from me, I'm among the world's most frequent travelers. You don't see this in other parts of the world. That still, people are, a lot of them are, they have either over-regulated themselves or in some ways, they are suspicious of technology. Maybe they got stuck in a habit, it's a bit like moving to a phone, that if you went through the whole landline curve, you took a different path. If you moved from no phone to smartphone, it was a much shorter path. So that is actually today what is happening in terms of the technology embrace. And I would say today, the more we embrace technology, the faster we embrace technology, the better our governance would be. It's good for ourselves, but it will also put into our system efficiencies, which will make us competitive. And as I mentioned at the start, it will create a reputation for India and the world as a democracy that delivers. So then we come to the next step, which is, okay, so what does foreign policy do? So here today, I want to say if there has been, in a way, a shortcoming, I'm doing a kind of a self-audit here. In the last 30 years, again, if you were to compare India and China, China built up deep technology strengths, which India did not do. When we opened our economy and we started speaking about reform, yes, we reformed various aspects of our policies, you can say, of our activities, but we didn't follow it up field by field, area by area, raising our ambitions with each possible year. So China started it much earlier. China started its reforms in the 70s. It took us the collapse of the Soviet Union, balance of payments crisis, for Narasimha Rao to actually, frankly, junk the entire legacy of those who ruled before him in order to make these reforms. But post that, yes, we have done big things. I'm not, diminishing them. But if I were to say, given the fact that we were 1 billion people, this is our destiny, you can say we are moving. For that kind of country with that kind of ambition that we should have had, we actually should have moved in the direction of developing deeper technologies and making it much more pervasive. But the real issue was this. The weakness in our system was the lack of focusing on manufacturing. And even today you have people like Raghuram Rajan who argue that India should not be manufacturing. And there is a body of opinion out there. There are political people who believe that we should not be manufacturing. Now, I ask you a very basic question. Are you going to build technology without building manufacturing? Does that make sense to any of you? If you are abandoning, if you say, oh, I'm going to be a services economy, I'm not going to do manufacturing, you're not only abdicating your manufacturing future, you're actually abdicating your technology future. So today, I would say, how to actually purpose foreign policy, to build those relationships, to create the environment where there is more manufacturing in this country,
where we are actually able to leapfrog. That, there are two very interesting developments which are happening post-COVID in the world. When COVID happened, people woke up to the fact that the entire world was dependent on a single geography for 32% of global manufacturing. And when that geography choked up or decided to squeeze, everybody was at risk. So what has happened after COVID is actually an enormous effort in different geographies. Every big country and sometimes not so big countries, they are looking today to build new supply chains. That they want, and they're doing, this is like business 101. That, nobody wants to be dependent on a single supplier. Maybe it's on a holiday. So we have a chance today to get into global supply chains and catch the manufacturing bus which we missed in the 1990s. And it is that thinking today which has actually made the Modi government undertake something like the Production Linked Incentive Program, PLI program, to encourage collaborators from different parts of the world. I mentioned semiconductors as an example, to look to India to partner and to find ways of doing the kind of leapfrogging, but in a much more contemporary era, which we should have done maybe in the 1990s and the first decade of the 2000s, but which today, for the last decade, we have been trying to do. So our target today should be manufacturing. Yes, obviously, the employment employment heavy manufacturing, build many of the traditional industries because they are still the backbone of any economy. But also at the same time, look at these sunrise sectors. Look at semiconductors and chips. Look at, drones and space. Look at electric vehicles and battery storage. These are actually going to be today the new opportunities, and it's vital today, both as a country which needs to build those technology strengths, as well as actually to create the kind of employment which is, where we can be competitive, because I'll come to that point. And this is, to my mind, one of the central tasks for foreign policy in the journey towards Viksit Bharat. Now, what is the tailwind that I have? The tailwind I have today is that in the digital age, people are also waking up to the fact, where does my data reside? Who is harnessing my data? Who is monetizing my data? Who is deploying my data? And you have to ask yourself this question: when was the last time you worried about who was actually making your data into a product or a service or a power? And that today is also a key question for us strategically. So there is a world today, if you go into the digital domain, the two key words today are trust and transparency. That at the minimum, there should be some rules of the game, some legal safeguards, some remedy out there, some transparency. You've got to have some sense of, okay, how is my data going? Who has the right to look at my data? And this is, again, in many ways, an opportunity for us. Because, as I said, there is, at the end of the day, the belief that, look, this is a market economy, a contract is a contract. If you don't like it, you can go. There is a legal remedy out there. And again, if you look at the last 30, 40 years, our reputation in the world is certainly that of a country that plays by the rules. Now, these give us the opportunity. What actually gives us, what is the key card we have? What is it we bring to bear which will allow us to actually leverage that opportunity? And that answer is all of you. That answer is all of you, because let me tell you, we have one thing which actually is our ace of spades, and that is people. There is today, I mean, just next time you have 10 minutes to spare, just go look at demographic trends in the world. It's amazing, you know. People are speculating, saying energy will go this way, you know, drones will shape that thing, space will come in, all of which is true. But probably the biggest factor which will change the international economy and not possibly, inevitably, the influence and power capabilities of nations is actually demographics. And particularly if you look at the demographics of some very key technology-centric powers in the world today. And in this I would even include the United States. So we are entering, when you know, on the one hand, if we are conscious that this is a data-driven existence, that AI will be more and more key in this world, you then need all the skills and talents that will go with it. And that doesn't necessarily mean going out of the country. We keep talking about make in India, make for the world. I can tell you a time is coming when we should be thinking work in India, work for the world. That is coming. And we have, because the demands will be so big, that it will not be a case of an individual saying, you know, they are offering my job, but, you know, if I don't take it, I won't get a job. We will actually increasingly realize our self-worth. That there will be people who will say, you know, fine, I'm happy you're living in Bengaluru. Just get hooked up to my system. I'd like to employ you. I'd like to get your skills, your designs, your capabilities out there. So, number one, this, you know, how does foreign policy, if the job of foreign policy today is to accelerate national development in a technology-centric age, foreign policy obviously will use the human talents of India as the primary capital with which it would operate outside. But there is also a very powerful second factor, that is actually our markets. That if you do the maths, okay, in this period, this Viksit Bharat period, there are some Goldman Sachs studies, there are other studies as well. Take a look at it. The general consensus is by 2047 will be a $30 trillion economy. Okay? Do the maths. Our population by that time will probably be somewhere between 1.5 to 1.6 trillion. You're a $30 trillion economy. Imagine what consumption and production capabilities you will have with that. And then ask yourself this question. What is the price of access to this market, to this center of production and consumption? And therefore, it is important when we engage the world today that people should pay a price for accessing India. That there should be trade-offs. That's how nations grow. You know, if you want to operate in my country, I need to see what is it you're going to give me. And which is why now if you connect the dots, connect make in India, connect work in India, connect access to India. We want to see more and more international technology, production, design, engineering centers come to this country. And we are very confident that if we have a strong enough government, because again, a lot of it is willpower, okay? A lot of it is self-confidence. I mean, you have to go up against the best people in the world and say, okay, you know, we know that's a great thing you have an offer there, but these are our bottom lines. And these bottom lines, I mean, you want to do business with us? These are some of the things you need to take into account. So we have today the ability, we are building the ability today to negotiate with the world, to get the best for our citizens. So when we put forward, you know, a vision saying, okay, next 25 years, this is what we're going to do.
this is just not nice words which somebody with a skill for writing has devised. These are actually well thought through ideas on which we spend a lot of time. We constantly keep strategizing. We ask other people. We look at the experience of other people. And today, we have that sense of confidence that given how much change we actually can feel that momentum, as I said, the bottom-up momentum which today is taking this country forward. This is actually what is going to get us to Viksit Bharat. There are, of course, two other issues. I don't want to dilate on it because I like to leave time for questions. I think in that journey, obviously one very important part of it is how do we secure ourselves and how do we shape, the larger global issues. I think that's a subject in itself. If you have questions, I'd be happy to respond to that. And then, of course, there is a question which the world will rightly ask itself. The world will rightly ask itself, so what kind of power will India be? 10 years ago, the world had no reason to ask this. Because 10 years ago, we were number 11 in the list of economies. In the next few years, from number 5 currently, we'll be number 3. If you are 3, if you are 3, I mean, there are then only 2 places to go up, okay? If you are 3 pushing to go up, believe me, the world will spend more and more time and effort trying to understand, okay, who are these guys? What are they going to be like? What happens when they get more powerful? And here, there will be these debates. You read about it, are we democracy, are we West, are we South? Bottom line, at the end of the day, people will try all sorts of definitions at us. Many of these definitions may be true, at least partially. But at the end of the day, I would say eventually we will be sui generis, that we will be an India that is us. And that is why, in the book that I have just brought out, I have made this point that we will be an India that is more Bharat. That we will be a civilization, that it is not just technology that we will bring to the table. We will actually also bring an enormous heritage and I would say in a way a wisdom of tradition. That, finally a country which has existed, a society which has existed for thousands of years, knows many things and intuitively and actually has, a value which much more recent societies perhaps have not matured to that point. So this will also be a debate as we move towards Viksit Bharat. And our effort really would be, how do you build the best brand? How do you have the maximum number of partners? How do you have the minimum amount of problems? How do you actually, how are you, in a sense proud of or conscious of, aware of everything you are, but yet it is a positive sentiment that, to me, being nationalist is not being against internationalism. We are not the West which sees this as a dichotomy. That, even if you see the last 10 years, the more we have progressed, actually the more we have committed ourselves to the world. So I would suggest to you that, as a group of people who are interested in the sort of the long-term future of India, we also need to give thought to what kind of power will we be. It's something which can actually be fleshed out. There's a lot of thinking, I think, that needs to go into it. So these were some of the thoughts I had. I thought it would be a good idea to present them before you. And I believe we have some time, so I'd be happy to respond to any questions or comments you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this very comprehensively articulating the topic that you very beautifully put. What should foreign policy be doing in the pursuit of Viksit Bharat? If I can summarize your talk on 4 quick points, there was a seamless conceptualization of empiricism and the development of India's kind of progress towards Viksit Bharat. And secondly, when you stressed upon the infrastructural innovation and the invention kind of development and journey of India, you didn't also leave out the last man standing, that the whole concept of Antyodaya, that also came out very clearly. You also sort of enlarged the scope of foreign policy as an area of study of the people who do foreign policy, like diplomats and the statesmen and all, to the people, common people, and they are as important components of foreign policy and diplomacy. The last, the incredible democratic strength of this country, and its dream towards actually, achieving a Viksit kind of Bharat, that the objective that we have set. The last point that Minister actually, stressed upon was in the last 10 years, what we have done to ourselves is that we have enabled our capacity to think big and to work towards it. And that is where the deliberative kind of democracy that came out very clearly. So with these, summing up, with your permission, sir, can we take few questions from the audience? So in the interest of time, what we'll do is, I know this is a very alert audience, we'll take 3 sets of questions. Each set will have 4 questions. Please, we'll introduce ourselves very briefly and directly come to the question without much of preamble, much of introduction. So, so we'll start from the girl there. Okay, there. You. Please get up. Yeah. Can someone pass the mic to her? Yeah. Very brief.
Sir.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to have you here. So my question is, like as you all are aware of that India and China, we both have like conflicts. So is it like safer for Indian students to go to China for studies, and what do you think, like if we increase some educational collaboration with China, so do you think that will it increase the good relationship with China?
Okay. Okay. The boy there, yeah, black t-shirt. Yeah, with the mobile phone. Can you hand over the mic to? Yeah, first.
So I have some of the questions for you. First is, you mentioned TSMC, that he has collaboration with India, and we follow one China policy with us. And there is a threat for Taiwan, for threat from China currently going on. And I think if this investment is there and TSMC holds the most of the market cap in the semiconductor industry, what will be our steps to save this investment and get this technology in India? Another question is...
one question, please. I request. Okay, please. Dr. Sasi here. You can stand and speak. You can.
Good evening, sir. I'm Shashi Kumar. Over the past decade, India has undergone a remarkable transformation that is evident to the world. However, when we examine global reports such as the Global Hunger Index, Global Freedom of Speech, Liberty, we see a different narrative. How does India plan to address the challenges posed by such discrimination and work towards overcoming these obstacles on the international stage?
Thank you. The last question, boy here. Please say so.
My name is Rajesh. Sir, I have more of a request than a question. Sir, most of the students applying for international internship from different colleges of India are facing visa issues, sir. So we have paid over 1.4 lakh rupees for the flight tickets 2 months back, and almost 600 plus students who have applied through MyTex have been facing the difficulty. We already have done our biometrics for Canadian visitor visa 60 days back for different universities of Canada, but our research internships and sir, as per the previous trend, for previous batch students, Canadian government issued the visa timely, but this time there is an unknown delay for the same, sir. So we kindly request you to bring your attention in this matter, as this is the matter of 600 plus students, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, you know, the India and China and students. Look, the issue today between India and China is not that we don't have enough contacts or we don't know each other or there aren't people who are dealing with each other. In fact, you know, having been myself in China for many years, I can tell you there were thousands of Indian students there. But having students in a country like China has no impact or has no relevance really to what their policies are in regard to issues like the border. What is the problem today with China? You know, they're a neighbor, we can compete, all of that is okay. You know, life is competitive, we all compete. But when with any country there is an agreement, there is an understanding, it is vital for the sake of trust and credibility that that is maintained. In the case of China from 1993, we've had agreements that, you know, neither side will bring large forces to the border and we will maintain peace and tranquility on the border. And after almost 30 years, they have chosen to, you know, without any justification, to disregard that agreement. So here is an issue. You know, more students going there or not, that's not going to deal one way or the other with the Chinese troops which are trying to put pressure on the border. Border is border, troops are troops. I need a solution for that. And if I don't get a solution for that, obviously then it's very hard to have a normal relationship. So we don't, you know, it's not like we want a bad or a difficult relationship with China. But I will not be pressurized by a neighbor. I will not have someone, you know, violate agreements and not be held to account. I think it's important that things get back on track and they realize what is their responsibility in this regard. On the semiconductor issue, by the way, it is PSMC, it's not TSMC, the one which has done the agreement with us. Look, you know, to me, this is a business agreement. It's a business agreement responding to market demands. There is obviously a belief there and a confidence in India today that we have the ability to get into the semiconductor business. So any business has risks. I mean, there could be geopolitical, there could be other risks as well. You know, whoever is the Indian party here, I'm sure that they have calculated what the risks are. But clearly they see, you know, some years ago, some of you may have noticed it was not so easy to get a car, okay? The waiting time for cars had increased in India. And the reason was actually shortage of chips. So there is a demand out there, there is an opportunity for India, for Indian business, for Indian employees, for Indian skills out there. And we should make the best of it because there is this desire to diversify the production of semiconductor, of chips and you know, associated products. On the hunger freedom index, look, you know, sometimes you actually wonder who are these guys who are writing these reports. And I mean, I'm not even questioning their intent. I'm actually questioning their basic homework at times. That if you look at some of these reports, it is so riddled with inaccuracies. You spoke about the freedom aspect of it. Some time ago, there was a report we had, one of the former Chief Justices, Justice Gogoi, joined the parliament as a member of the Rajya Sabha. This was portrayed as though it had some implication for judicial independence. Now the fact is that a former Chief Justice Ranganath Mishra had joined, another Justice Baharul Islam had joined. Apparently when they did, there was no threat. Okay? Again, people were casting aspersions saying, you see, this phrase in Hindi, naach na jane angan teda. So when people start losing elections, when they start losing elections, they first say, EVM, something wrong there, election commission, something wrong there. So the excuses start even before the process begins. Now you had people, this very same report, some of them were saying things about, well, maybe the election commission, it's not as impartial as it used to be. Now again, the fact is, if you look back in our history, we've actually had a Central Election Commissioner, Mr. M.S. Gill, join Parliament, actually then join political party, become a minister, okay? At that time, Election Commission was fine. So, people pick and choose, they distort, even the hunger index. On the one hand, in the last 10 years, okay, you actually had a Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana which feeds 815 million people, gives them 5 kilograms of rice or atta and a kilogram of pulses and other things. Now if you're giving 815 million people food month after month, please tell me how can the hunger index get worse? I mean, it's a no-brainer. So nobody's questioning what you're doing on the supply side. So I think these, in a way you rightly called it saying narratives. Okay, these are narratives, and these are, today the narratives are partly, the idea, let me be honest, a lot of it is political, some of it is like country driven, and some of it are people, frankly, who are finding it hard to get used to the idea that India is different. That, this is not the same old India which would listen to them. I think that is a problem. So, my only response is, when people push you, you push back. If they comment on you, I tell them, I said, sure, I'm a democratic guy. You have the right to say anything you like, but then don't start crying when I say things, because I will also say. Democracy is not a one-way street. Everybody has a right then to an opinion, and then please also be good enough to hear me out. On the Canadian visa issue, look, many countries today, I know there are some issues with some other countries also, are apparently struggling with the efficiency of the visa process. I honestly find it difficult to understand why, because I own system, how digitized we have become, how frankly the speed at which we process visa requests in India. So perhaps they're not using technology enough. Perhaps, I don't know. I can't imagine that it is a policy on their part. But definitely, I think if the student community in India is having issues, you mentioned Canada, but I also get sometimes concerns about European countries, sometimes about the US. It is something that we take up.
Yeah, we'll have second boy there. Then he saw. after that one. Which boy? Yeah, you.
Beard, both have got beard.
Yeah, no, behind his sword, with a spade. Yeah, please start.
Operating procedures and recruitment. Do you think that the Foreign Policy Foundation could benefit from the members of scientific community at a direct capacity and ministry or embassy level? If yes, then are there discussions going on at ministry level regarding recruitment policy for such people? Example, lateral entry as opposed to the entry by traditional civil services examination.
Yeah, sure.
Dual citizenship for
So, as much as we are interested about economic growth and power, my question is, how much weightage is given to sustainability? So, sustainability, because we're already short of resources. A lot of major cities are running out of resources. There's water shortage in Bengaluru already 10 years down the lane. If we are involved taking up projects that's going to require manufacturing and other aspects, we have to think about sustainability. So how much weightage is given to sustainability?
Sorry. Over the history of the globe, the world economies have used the technology of today, manufacturing of today to build the technologies of tomorrow. So as Bengaluru, what is India's stance on building technology in the future, such as AI and quantum computing?
Yeah, thank you. So Sir will answer, then we'll come to the last set of questions.
On the, on having a greater scientific input into foreign policy, I think it's a very understandable concern. It doesn't, I don't think the answer is so much in lateral entry. I think we have already a practice that in important embassies we have something called a science counselor. So I know we have one in Japan, in US, in Moscow, etc. If I can give you a parallel, it would be like the military side, where, if you induct somebody into the foreign service, it cannot be sure that they continue to remain conversant or sharp about their domain expertise. It's better to actually work with the other institution and get, in a sense, the best or the most competitive talent from there. So to deal with military issues, in fact, we have a very mature system of what we call defense attaches or military advisors, and we use them very, very extensively. In fact, we are expanding that in current times. In the case of science, there are some embassies where we have DRDO rep. There are some where we have atomic energy representatives. I would say the solution is to create more complex embassies, where a certain core work is done by the Foreign Service, but there are many other dimensions where you graft a skill onto what is a vehicle, rather than try to grow it organically in your system. I don't believe it would be that efficient. On dual citizenship, people keep debating it. Right now, that the last time Government of India made a decision was when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. At that time, we came up with the OCI system. Since then, I think the debate continues, but I'm not aware of any, imminent or, any direction which really takes it forward where dual citizenship is concerned, because there are, we know the plus points, but I can tell you there are also some challenges
which come with dual citizenship. Even remember, even with OCI, there are restrictions. So there are some things you can do and some things that you cannot do. On sustainability, oh, absolutely. You know, I don't think it's anybody's case that you know, we pursue manufacturing or industrialization in a manner in which previous countries who are today big manufacturing powers pursue it. I don't think the planet can sustain it. So we have to, you know, when I was saying that what kind of power will we be, that also, by the way, applies to what kind of economy will we be. Because we cannot grow the way the West grew. We cannot grow the way China grew. So we have to find our way. So in many cases, if we focus on the sunrise sectors that I spoke about, they are environmentally actually less damaging or less stressful than the traditional industrialization manufacturing. But that's only one part of it. I think you know, again, it's interesting. Many of the big ideas today about how to be kinder to the planet are actually coming out of India. The biggest move to spread solar energy was actually the International Solar Alliance, which Prime Minister Modi proposed in COP21 in Paris. Even now, I mean, I'm now taking it from a big concept into something very, very practical to hit the ground, you can say. This whole idea of Surya Ghar Yojana, the idea that everybody will have rooftop solar generation, and that houses will actually reduce their consumption, and if you can actually tie this to an era of electric vehicles, you can even actually deal with charging stations in a much more distributed fashion. So, you know, it's important we try to think through solutions today. Again, one recurring event, we are seeing more and more climate events, okay, in the world. In fact, I would put that as a very big risk today for the international economy. Now, it makes sense today that we actually plan for it rather than react to it. So again, this idea that we build for disaster resilience, that those on the coast build for higher sea levels, people more likely to be hit by cyclones or more likely to be hit by landslides, or those on the hills. So how do you actually configure your life through standards, through policies, through laws and regulations for actually this kind of thing? Or I give you two very different examples, very small examples. But if you actually do it, I can tell you, you know, given our population, you know, take this advocacy of millets, okay? I think it will surprise some of you to know that till the mid-60s, there were parts of India where nobody had eaten wheat or rice. That the only grain that they ate, in fact, I have been to parts of India where people had not even seen wheat till the mid-60s when it came in as PL 480 because we had 4 or 5 years of rain failure. What happened? What happened was very large parts of India abandoned the consumption of what was the traditional grain. Okay? I mean, this is ragi country. Okay? People gave up on ragi and shifted to wheat and to rice. Now, here's the difference. If you look at millets, look at the water consumption, look at the nutrition. By every logic, we actually should have been eating millets. But, okay, history took a different turn. But today we have a chance to correct it. Now, you can say, okay, this is India. You know, it's an interesting thing. Once I started propagating millets, because Prime Minister Modi said International Year of Millets, you would be surprised how many African countries actually eat millets. That's another 1.4 billion people out there, together. So just think about it. You know, a shift to something as, you know, as basic as move your primary grain it will have a huge sustainability consequence. So even this initiative which Mr. Modi pushes called LIFE, which is make small changes in your life. I mean, I at least do one. I take staircases as much as I can. It's a small thing. I mean, the collateral benefit is you will also be fitter. But if you actually look at all the little things that we can all do, rainwater harvesting in your house, in villages. We had this big campaign last year, no, the year before, called Amrit Sarovar, okay? We asked every village of India, saying, can you actually create 75 water bodies? Okay, sorry, not every village, every district of India, okay? Can you create 75 water bodies in your district? Big ones, small ones. And by the way, it's very interesting. I mean, when you people travel next in the countryside, take a look. You will actually find in India abandoned water body. There'll be a depression, which used to be a water body once upon a time. Sometimes there are even steps going down, and it's dry. Now, again, it's brilliant in its simplicity, but it actually works. 750 districts of India, each one doing 75 Amrit Sarovars. We actually ended up with 50,000 water bodies, new water bodies in the course of 1 year. So the next time so I think we need to keep thinking this through and coming up with what are solutions. And I absolutely agree with you, which is why today, as I said, the semiconductors, electric vehicles, and we need today not to be behind. I mean, we've lost out on a few revolutions. This one, like we could show during vaccines, we are showing in telecom. This coming revolution, the age of AI, chips, and EV, we need today to be up there. The last question on the manufacturing and tech. Look, I think it's a common sense proposition today. I mean, you said tomorrow's technology will come out of today's manufacturing. But if our problem is actually we have made manufacturing very difficult in this country. That to have a competitive manufacturing industry, we have to have easier to do business. We have to have the infrastructure. We have to make it, that the regulatory, the burden of rules on business, and we have to stop being hostile to business. Business is an employment creator, because sometimes in this country it's very fashionable to beat up on business. When we look at business, we should actually think employment. How many people is this person employing? So, how do we actually, I would approach it saying, to me, one metric today would be really, how do I focus on employment and how do I focus on talent, technology creation? And that is why I said I was very happy that somebody was introduced saying they had 5 patents to their name. See, that is the direction we should be going.
My sincere apologies. We are already late. You will kindly forgive us. Okay, and we have got your questions. There are so many questions we have got online, but we'll have to close the session here. Thank you, sir, for kindly agreeing to take the questions. Over to Disha. Over to Disha.
The talk and interaction touched upon many topics ranging from technology to providing solutions to Indian-centric problems. Thank you for giving pertinent examples which were important in shining light on the close relation between technology and governance and how their tandem yields a fruitful life for the citizen. It was impressive by the way the present government comprehensively analyzed our past failures, shortcomings, and weaknesses, leading to identifying our potential and present strengths. By knowing the pulse of the nation, the government has been able to respond quickly and suitably to unprecedented events, eradicate extreme and multidimensional poverty, launch captivating schemes to facilitate growth in various private and public industries, and enhance India's domestic and international reputations. I wholeheartedly thank the Honorable External Affairs Minister for his enlightening speech and interaction. I humbly thank him again for the time he took out from his busy schedule and for sharing such inspiring thoughts with the young minds. I request Professor Satish to give a token of gratitude to him. Next, I would like to call upon Tushar, Shivanshu, Arushi, Ananya, Arnab, and Deepti to present the memento to our endearing guest. With this, we are close to concluding our event. I request Ms. Ananya to deliver the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw this enlightening interaction to a close, I extend my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for your active participation and enthusiastic engagement throughout this event. First and foremost, I express my deepest gratitude to the Honorable External Affairs Minister, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, for gracing us with his presence and for sharing his invaluable insights and vision with us. Your wisdom and experience have truly enriched our understanding and inspired us. I extend heartfelt thanks to Professor Satish Vashu Kailas for his continuous support and guidance, and all the dignitaries on and off the dais for their well wishes. We would like to thank Mr. Srinivas Aithal, Head Administration of NIAS, for providing the auditorium in such short notice and providing the necessary documents in getting permission. We are thankful to the returning officer and ASP officer, Sadashiv Nagar Police Station, for facilitating the program. We would like to thank Mr. Amit Hebber from Prastuta for his hard work in making the program a success. I also extend my appreciation to Dr. Anshuman Behera for moderating the engaging question and answer session and helping us throughout making this event a smooth event. A special thanks to all the volunteers who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the smooth executions of this program. I would like to express my gratitude to the individual whose melodious rendition invoked a sense of serenity and auspiciousness at the beginning of the event. Last but not the least, I extend my thanks to all the attendees for their active participation, thoughtful questions, and enthusiastic contribution which have made this event a truly memorable and enriching experience. Thank you once again. I wish you all continued success and inspiration in your endeavors. Thank you so much.
1 minute. Finally, we will sing the national anthem. But before that, I would like to request the dignitaries to remain on the dais after the national anthem so that we can take a photo with our volunteers. So I request everyone now to stand up for the national anthem. Okay, let's start. Jana Gana Mana. Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Punjab
Sindh, Gujarat, Marathi.